So with that in mind and with no further ado, I want to welcome Freya McGregor, who is in Alabama right now, and we're going to be sensitive with her time and let her get to bed as quickly after her presentation as possible. But if you do have questions during her presentation, you can enter them in chat and we'll go through those so she won't be having to look down at chat. And I'm so happy you're here, Freya. I've learned so much about you and your work at Birdability, and I can't wait to see what you hear what you have to say. So take it away.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Freya McGregor. My pronouns are she, her, and I am really impressed with what y'all are doing. A couple of just random thoughts about your birdathon. I love the big sits. A lot of people can't move down a trail as easily or as comfortably as others, and so a big sit is a really awesome, very often more accessible way to go birding for a bunch of people. That's really cool. What else did I notice? Oh, that you're including audio, not just visual. You'll hear me talk more about that in a minute, but right, there's different ways to enjoy birds and it's not all visual. And we, as a birding community, we really kind of need to move a little bit away from focusing so heavily on the visuals in case it is exclusionary. And then the other thing I just got to giggle about was your gorgeous sparrow t-shirt, because I am working on being more inclusive about birds on my own, because I'm originally from Australia and we don't have any native sparrows in Australia. We just have a bucket load of invasive house sparrows. And so the first 3 years of living in the US, I just be like, oh, it's a sparrow, because that's what it was like in Australia. Like, oh, this is a, invasive bird. It's bad news. Like, I'm not even going to spend time looking at it. Which, by the way, has maybe some growing in there to do anyway. But then after a while working through my own internal biases on sparrows here, I'm still learning my sparrows very much and enjoying how gorgeous small brown birds can be if you give them half a chance. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm going to share my screen with you and we'll jump right in. So yeah, we're here to talk today about birdability, because birding is for everybody and everybody. I'm the Birdability coordinator. I'm also an occupational therapist, and if you're not familiar, occupational therapy is a healthcare profession that's all about enabling people to do the things in their everyday life that bring them meaning, but that they are having difficulty doing because of a disability, injury, or illness. Sometimes it's things like cooking dinner independently or navigating public transport. Sometimes it's birding. And I'm pretty sure I'm the only OT on the planet whose full-time job is about helping people go birding despite their injuries, illnesses, and disabilities. It's pretty cool. So what do you see in this photo? Now, if you are blind or have low vision, or you need to look away from your screen or anything, you won't miss any information. I will verbalize everything that is presented visually, so don't worry about that. And by the way, this is my reminder point to myself. If you have an access challenge that impacts your ability to go birding and you feel comfortable sharing it, not everyone does, so there's no pressure, but if you would like, I would love if you wanted to introduce yourself in the chat, because I don't know you, and if you wanted to share your experiences and join in throughout. I can't multitask and look at the chat and present at the same time, but I'm really looking forward to looking at the chat at the end and seeing that. And sometimes that can take a life of its own in these, so don't feel obliged if you're not comfortable doing that. But if you would like to share, I invite you to. Okay, so I see 6 people. They're all white. 5 of them are using wheelchairs. 4 of those are manual wheelchairs, which are either self-propelled, you wheel yourself, or you can get pushed. The one on the back right corner, the orange one, that's a power wheelchair. The back right hand, the 2 on the right are also kind of more heavy duty, kind of off-road looking wheelchairs. Wheelchairs are super cool. You can get wheelchairs for all different purposes, like bikes. There's mountain bikes and there's road bikes and there's all kinds of bikes, and same with wheelchairs, except there's probably even more wheelchairs. Everyone's holding binoculars. Oh, I missed a key point. There's a standing person. Not every disability is visible. Really important to know that and keep that in mind. We don't know if she has an access challenge. We have no idea just by looking at her. And that's the case with lots of people and their access challenges. Everyone's holding binoculars, probably looking at birds. I don't know. It's a good guess. But you don't need binoculars to enjoy birds, and we will talk more about that in a moment. And they're all on what looks like it could maybe be a reasonably accessible trail. It's concrete, it's quite wide, it's flat. These are all really good indicators, but we can't see the rest of the trail, so we don't really know. It is, in fact, a really great accessible trail. It's Sweetwater Wetlands in Tucson, Arizona. It's very birdy, and it's a very accessible birding location. It's really, really cool. So what do we know? We know that time spent in nature is good for us. A lot of people just inherently know that going for a walk or sitting by a lake, you know, it's just a good thing to do, especially if you're feeling stressed. And there is a growing body of evidence that supports this statement. In fact, there's evidence to support the fact that spending time in nature can help reduce stress, can help increase feelings of positivity, can even help increase our attentional capacity, which is like how much brain space you have to focus on something. Even 10 minutes sitting on a bench in a garden can do that. There's evidence to support that. We also know that birds can be the gateway to spending time in nature. They have outrageous feathers. They make all kinds of bizarre noises, and they can fly. I mean, that's wild. And so for a lot of people, heading out or staying in and enjoying birds is their kind of prompt to get all those health and wellness benefits from being out in nature. We know that birding is the fastest growing leisure activity in the US, and the statistic is 22 years old, but in 2000, 85 million Americans were enjoying wild birds, and that number has significantly grown in the last 2 years. There's data to support that as well, that during the pandemic, a lot of people feeling more restricted and shut in were suddenly noticing these things just outside their windows that could fly and represent freedom, and things nearby started meaning more. And so a lot more people engaged with birds in the last 2 years. And we believe that birding has the potential to be inclusive and accessible. And it's awesome to see how much work y'all are doing, but there's still some more to do. That's okay though, we can do it. We also know that 1 in 4 Americans has a disability. 1 in 4 is a lot of people. This is the biggest minority group, and it's the only one you can join at any time. 20 million of those people have a mobility challenge, and 7 million are blind or have low vision. And I know that seems like a really vague low vision, like in English, that seems kind of like generalist and not specific. It's actually really specific. My clinical background as an occupational therapist is in blindness and low vision services, and low vision, it's sort of the point at which glasses no longer help. You still have some vision, some functional vision, but the glasses aren't kind of fixing it for you anymore. So there's lots of different eye conditions that can cause low vision. Cataracts, you know, if you don't get cataracts removed, that's something. Macular degeneration you might have heard of. Anyway, we're also talking about our future selves. As I said, you can join the disability community at any time, and we're all getting older. Every tick of the clock. This is not a conversation about us and them. This is about all of us. So Birdability is a brand new nonprofit. We became a nonprofit in January last year. Really exciting, and our mission is to share the joys of birding with people who have disabilities and to ensure birding is accessible to everybody. We have 3 spokes of our work, and like a wheelchair's wheel, they roll into each other. They keep feeding off each other, and it's really important we're addressing all of these at once if we want to do our job properly. We want to address the physical accessibility of birding locations. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. We want to empower a welcoming and inclusive birding community. We're going to talk about that as well. And then we want to introduce people with access challenges to birding, and that's going to be all y'all's homework after tonight. So we focus on people with mobility challenges, blindness or low vision, chronic illness, intellectual or developmental disabilities, mental illness, and those who are neurodivergent, deaf or hard of hearing, or who have other health concerns. It's a big group of people. But the cool thing is, and this happens a lot with the work around inclusion, even though we are focusing on this list of people, there's a whole lot of other people who can benefit from this, like parents with strollers. That's a mobility challenge. Grandparents with little toddlers, older people just slowing down, people with new medical diagnoses, folks with dodgy knees. That's me. I woke up nearly 3 years ago one morning and I couldn't straighten my right leg. I had planned on hiking up the White Mountains of New Hampshire that summer a few times. We lived in Boston at the time. and my husband's in the army, so we've lived in a few places, and I couldn't walk half a mile. Suddenly I couldn't walk half a mile without significant pain. I really needed the Birdability map, but it didn't exist yet. It does now, and we will talk about that more. Again, this is about our future selves. It's not an us and them conversation. And as soon as we all realize that, the more vested we will be in this work, because this impacts all of us. So Virginia Rose is the founder and president of Birdability. She's a retired high school English teacher who lives in Austin, Texas, and has been birding for 20 years. But when she was 14, she was in a horse riding accident, and she fell off a horse, and it caused a T10 spinal cord injury. That's the level of the spine where the injury happened, and it's about waist height. And as a result of that injury, she can no longer feel or use her legs. And so to get around, she uses a manual wheelchair. And she discovered birding, but she kept running into a whole lot of difficulties. Parking was a real challenge. Yes, she drives. She has a modified van and hand controls, which is super cool. So she can drive. Gates. She's trying to go birding, however everyone else goes birding. And if that includes ducking under gates, going out in big fields, looking for mountain plovers and things, she's all about that. This photo shows Virginia, scooching under a gate in her wheelchair, a big gate that's across a road trying to stop cars. Not everyone can do this, by the way. Not every wheelchair user can do this. Virginia can, but there are lots of ways to design gates, and there are some that are better than others from an accessibility standpoint. Bathrooms were a big problem. Steps and curbs. Virginia will tell you that one small step, depending on the day for her and her other capabilities that day, one step can be the difference between her needing someone's help and being able to access that location by herself. And she will tell you strongly that being unattended in nature is where the real joy for her comes from. Being out in nature by herself, not needing to rely on someone else for help, is really important to her. And from an occupational therapy perspective, independence is really important for a lot of people, for a lot of different things that they do. And so she'll tell you one small step can be that difference. Walking people don't even know this, but one small step. Railings, safety barriers. There's lots of, we want safety barriers. We don't want to fall off cliffs. I'm not saying don't have safety barriers, but there are lots of ways to design them. And unfortunately, many of them have a big plank of wood rotated so the widest part is exactly at the eye line of a seated person in a wheelchair, completely obstructing their vision. You can design them lots of other ways, but most people don't know. And by the way, if there's anything in here you don't know and you're like, oh no, I should have known that, don't worry about feeling shame. Like, that's not helpful. Don't forget that. We're not trying to shame you. We're just trying to teach you. Then you can learn and go forwards. Mud and sand, really difficult to get over in a wheelchair. And she's in Texas, so cattle guards, cactus spines, and cow patties have all caused their own obstacles in her many birding adventures. And she'll tell you that cow patties on your boots are one thing, but cow patties on your wheels, and so your hands, and so your optics are quite a different thing. And all of these things independently and then collectively create a lack of independence for her. And she values that, like so many other people, values that independence really, really highly. But difficulty and uncertainty lead to empowerment and joy, or so she says. And she kept birding despite all of those difficulties because the joys were so good. Learning, friendships, travel opportunities. This is a photo of Virginia at McGee Marsh, which is in Ohio. She was at the biggest week in American birding, Big Bird Festival up there, and she and I will be there this year in May, leading outings and holding a workshop. So really looking forward to that. But travel doesn't have to be interstate or international. Travel can be going 20 minutes down the road to a place you've never been before and exploring that. Physical health benefits, moving her body outside, confidence, navigating new things she didn't know she could, and then she could, and independence, like this feeling of empowerment. Community. Oh, there are so many good things about being part of a community, sharing experiences with others who have similar values and interests as you. There's so much good stuff that is connected to being part of a community. Purpose, looking forward to going birding on the weekend, and the birds themselves. All of these things created so much empowerment for Virginia, but she never saw anyone else in a wheelchair out birding. And she thought maybe people just don't know how many joys of birding there are that they could get from birding. So that's where the idea of Birdability sprung. And this is a great point to stop here for a second and mention that Virginia uses a manual wheelchair. Lots and lots of different people use manual wheelchairs for different reasons. There's power wheelchairs too. There's people like me with a dodgy knee. We all have mobility challenges, but they're all quite different. And there's a lot of other access challenges that are created by different disabilities and health concerns. So disability is diverse. It's a really big group of people and everyone has different needs. Don't let this overwhelm you. Happily, a lot of them are really similar. So it's just a really important thing to keep in mind. So when determining about an accessible trail or an accessible birding location, there's quite a few things that this very diverse group of people need to consider or would like to consider if given the opportunity. And birding locations, I'm talking about trails, bird blinds, observation platforms, feeder stations, car birding sites. These are all potentially accessible birding locations. Parking is really important. Not everyone can drive. So public transport or other ways to get to the location are really important. And if people can't get there, they can't use that place, right? So, but parking. So you've probably seen accessible parking spaces at supermarkets and so on. You may have noticed that some of them are labeled van accessible parking spaces, and those ones have an access aisle, a side bit next to the parking space with diagonal lines, like in this photo. That is because there are lots of people, Virginia included, who use a wheelchair accessible van that has a ramp that deploys out the side. That's how she gets in and out of the van. But if there is not enough space on the side of her van when she parks it to deploy that ramp, and then at the end of the ramp to get on and off it, she can't get in or out of her vehicle. If you take nothing else away from this presentation tonight, please never park in an access aisle. It's not a parking space. It's not a motorbike parking space. It's not a bicycle parking space. It's not a place to leave your shopping cart because you're in a rush. You can really mess someone's day up. And Virginia drives herself. So it's not like she can just send someone out to go move that trolley or the shopping cart out of her way. Okay, parking. Finding out the trail information ahead of time. This is valuable to a lot of different people. Many bird outings, their descriptions will say, this is an easy bird outing. And you're like, that's great. Easy for who? Like the marathon runner? Like who is, that's so subjective. That's not enough information. Many nature centers will say things like, we have an accessible trail. Awesome. Anything else about that? No? We need a lot more detail about outings and about trail information. Many of these photos were taken at Mammoth Cave National Park, which is in Kentucky. We were stationed there before Alabama, at Fort Knox, an hour north of this. And this was our COVID hideout 2 years ago in spring. It's a fabulous place during spring migration. And this trail is my favorite accessible trail of any I've ever visited. This trail had really detailed information about it at the trailhead and at every trail intersection where another trail, branched off. It has information about the length, the surface, the tread width, which is particularly important to people who are using mobility devices who need to be able to pass other people safely without being forced off the trail. Because if you are forced off the trail, you may not be able to get back on. Gradient or slope, and cross slope, which is how much of an angle you are on as you were traveling down that trail. Again, really important for a lot of people who use mobility devices and also people with balance issues and stuff like that. This trail, it's since been extended, but 2 years ago, the concrete part ended and a dirt trail continued. And I was just starting to figure out what my knee could handle. And I thought we were just going to do the concrete trail, but because there was this level of detail at that intersection, I thought, I think I could probably manage that. And I did. And it was so good. And we kept hiking and it was so good. And there were so many birds. There were indigo buntings everywhere. And it was amazing. And it was all because they had provided this trail information to me. I probably would not have done that otherwise. Bathroom accessibility. Now, most people need the bathroom at some point. A lot of people, particularly people with different chronic illnesses, need to use the bathroom more frequently. And like any built structure, there's lots of different factors that contribute to its accessibility. Things like, is the doorway wide enough? Is the door too heavy to push and hold open as you move through it? The stall size, is the sink low enough and the soap dispenser close enough that you can reach it? Are there grab bars in the stall? Is the toilet paper dispenser close enough you can reach while you're sitting on the toilet? True story, not always. This photo shows 2 portaloos, and this is my favorite because you can get accessible portaloos and you can get regular portaloos. And the thing is, everyone can use an accessible portaloo, but only some people can use a regular portaloo. If given the choice and there's no one else around, I would rather use an accessible portaloo because they tend to feel to me like there's a bit more space. They're a bit less kind of stinky and like hot and stuffy, and it's just kind of more pleasant experience. And if you're ever involved in renting some portaloos for a temporary project or for a trail like this, they're going to be kind of permanently located here. Just get the accessible portaloo because everyone can use it. Interpretive signs, really cool. I love interpretive signs. Learning stuff is awesome. But you've got to make sure that everybody can. So we want to have large print, size 16 font minimum, good contrast between the text and the background. We need to make sure that the sign is at a height that someone seated and someone standing can read. It's remarkable how many times I've been with Virginia and she can't read the stuff on the sign, or she can't get to it because the surface of the trail does not extend to that sign. It does here. The concrete trail extends to the sign. Sometimes they're over, 4 feet away in a grassy section. It's not, she can't get to that. Another thing that's cool about this sign is the tactile component up in the top right corner. It's representing sycamore tree bark, which is what this sign is sort of talking about on this floodplain. You might think that people who are blind or have low vision can benefit from that. Yes, definitely, but so can a lot of other people. And again, with accessibility, often you think it's just one group of people who will benefit, but most of the time there's a whole stack of other people who will benefit from that too. Little kids, people with print disabilities, people like me, kinesthetic learners. I just like touching stuff to learn. People who don't read English because it's not their first language and they haven't, then that's not a skill they have yet. And so they can still get something out of this sign because there's something to touch. The other thing we really love is having audio components on interpretive signs. Some places will have like an iPod or a wand that you can loan from the visitor center and punch in a number and listen to it as you go around, which is awesome if the visitor center's open. And the during COVID, a lot of visitor centers were not open. Sunday afternoon, maybe it closed at 1 o'clock on a Sunday. Here at Mammoth Cave, the visitor centre is like 5 miles away from this trailhead. Sorry, my sister's trying to call me from Australia and I put my phone on airplane mode, but apparently she's managing to get through, which is quite impressive. Time zones are confusing. The other option that some places use, and it's definitely better than nothing, don't get me wrong, but QR codes that you can scan with your smartphone, and it'll read aloud to you what's on the sign, which is great if you have a smartphone. Not everyone can afford a smartphone. Not everyone has battery by the time they're at this sign. Some places, like Mammoth Cave National Park, no reception at all in the whole park. So that's not a great choice. The coolest version of this I have seen is the thing that's next to this sign, which is a pillar with a solar panel on it. It's always open, it's always available, and you just press the button. Amazing. Maintenance is really important. Doesn't matter how wonderfully accessible your birding location is, if you don't maintain it, it will not stay that way. Vegetation, bushes can encroach if they're not kind of pruned to take up the width of the trail. And again, some people won't be able to travel that trail now because so much of the trail is obscured. Tree branches and tree trunks can come across the trail, and sighted people will just walk around it. They won't even hardly notice. But if you're blind or have low vision, not that fun to knock yourself out on a tree trunk when you're trying to go birding. Snow, maybe not so relevant in Santa Clara Valley, but that's an access consideration in a lot of places, and knowing what the ploughing schedule is, if the place can share that information on their website. If they plough every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and it's morning and it snows on Friday night, and I want to go on Saturday, I can really easily find out on their website that it won't be plowed. So I'm not going to drive 2 hours and drive 2 hours back really annoyed. Like, that's fine. I'll just go some other time. But sharing that information, so valuable. And leaves, sometimes in fall in some places, there's so many leaves on the trail that they're a huge slip hazard for everybody. But they can also be really tricky to navigate through if someone has balance or gait issues, or they use a mobility device of some kind. So even things like boardwalks, you know, sometimes the planks will flick up or there'll be a hole. There's all kinds of things. Maintenance is important. And railings, we already touched on this, that photo of Virginia. She can't see through those railings. This is my favorite version of a safety barrier. I thought someone had come and vandalized those 2 sections of this safety barrier. I was horrified, and I got closer and discovered that those 2 sections are perspex, clear perspex or plexiglass, like ½ inch thick. It's amazing. The safety barrier is intact and the visual obstruction has completely been removed. Little babies in strollers can see out. Toddlers don't have to look through those kind of jail bars. Virginia in her wheelchair can see everything. I can sit down on that bench and rest my dodgy knee and see everything that anyone else can. By the way, benches. We need more benches. So many people need benches. Benches with armrests that are connected to the paved surface of the trail. Benches, benches, benches. So now that you know a little bit about some of the access considerations, and by the way, I don't have time to tell you all the things that I wish I could tell you tonight. So there's a lot more information on our website, birdability.org. So if you're interested in any of this stuff, please go and check it out because there's heaps more up there. But now you know some of these access considerations, you are ready to help us plug that information gap by contributing to the Birdability map. So anyone can do this. You don't need to be qualified in any way. It's crowdsourced. It's global. You might be able to see there's a lot more locations pinned in the US, but I believe that our work is not limited by borders. It applies anywhere there are people and birds. And so if you're overseas, like, please, if you find a reasonably accessible birding location, please add it to the Birdability map. Reasonably accessible. That's the only time you have to make a judgment call in this process. And there's some quantifiers about what we consider reasonably accessible on the Birdability website. To help you, you can print off the checklist to take out with you. And it's a series of questions. All you have to do is just tell us what there is. And if you're a birder, you're probably good at observing and probably good at reporting what you find. So you're set. It looks big. It's only because there's lots of options. It's not actually hard. It just looks big. And just tell us what's there. You don't need to make judgment calls like, oh, that slope would be too steep for a wheelchair user. You don't know that. There's so many different kinds of people who use wheelchairs, and let's let people decide for themselves what they do or don't want to do. Just tell us what there is. And when you submit the site review electronically, it populates the Birdability map, and anyone can click on those yellow diamonds and find out this detailed information. Now, we really want to see this kind of detail on every park, nature center, national park, state park, county park, for all of their trails, because everyone has different access needs, right? So the stuff that Virginia maybe couldn't do in her wheelchair, maybe I could if I knew what was coming. You can also, we want this kind of information too in bird outing event descriptions. Some of the key information, there's more about that on our website too, but you can link directly to the Birdability map if you don't have enough space to explain everything. So feel free to do that if that's helpful. All right, change of topic here. I am on a mission to redefine birding as the act of enjoying wild birds. As simple and as broad as that. As I said, I'm originally from Australia. My parents are birders. They've been birders for a very long time. I've been birding since I was a little kid, but they don't call themselves birders. They call themselves bird watchers. And I asked them a few years ago, I said, why do you call yourself bird watchers and not birders? And they said, oh, well, birding is all very well, but it's a very American term and we're not American. Oh, that's fair enough. But you all know my clinical background is in blindness and low vision services, and not everybody watches birds. But people who are blind or have low vision can enjoy birds by birding by ear. In fact, most birders, I would say, bird by ear to some extent, even if they don't think they're good at it. If they hear a noise like, oh, I wonder what that is, I'll go look for it, right? I think that redefining birding as the act of enjoying wild birds is the easiest way we can be more inclusive as a birding community. And language is always evolving. We have the power to change the meaning of words just by the way we use them. This is something we can all do. I wrote an article for Audubon magazine a few months ago that I think will be in the chat if you want to hear more on my opinion of this. But not everyone watches, but everyone enjoys wild birds, right? I think if you enjoy wild birds, you're a birder. You don't need a qualification. You don't need to have been doing it for a certain amount of time or have enough species. How many is enough? One species on your life list. Like forget that. We don't need a hierarchy. That doesn't help people feel included and welcome. Beginner birders as well into this hobby. You don't even need binoculars, right? Not everyone can afford binoculars. Not everyone can use or carry binoculars. Not everyone feels comfortable looking through binoculars. In fact, someone told me that birders just have to be able to identify birds, and the American Birding Association's podcast, I pushed right back to that statement that the host made. I said, no, you don't need to be able to identify a bird to enjoy it. I don't know what every bird is called. Doesn't make it any less spectacular. Make up your own names. Who cares? Like, does that matter? It only matters if you're trying to communicate with someone else. It's helpful to have a shared language, sure, but you don't need to know what birds are called to enjoy them. I think this is the easiest thing we can do to make birding more welcoming and inclusive. And take it from me, I've had to make quite a few word swaps in my language choices coming from Australia to the US 6 years ago. You heard me say trolley before, shopping trolley, that's what we call it, but people laugh at me or they don't know what I mean here. But if I just say shopping cart, you'll just know what I'm saying. It's annoying the first few times, and then you just get used to it. It's really not that hard. So, and this goes for a lot of different things. Everybody is always allowed to identify however they want to. I encourage my parents to call themselves birders, but they don't want to. That's okay. That's their choice. But if you feel welcomed by this definition, and I hope you do, and you would like to change your personal language, or maybe as an organization, you all could think about this shift. It's not that hard to go from calling people bird watchers to birders. And bird walk is another one. And at the risk of sounding like I'm being too politically correct, Virginia, who cannot walk, talks about bird walks because that's what they're called. That's what everyone calls them. She won't let me adjust her language. That's okay. But if it's so easy just to do a little word swap and call it a bird outing or a field trip, and if that means even just one person feels that much more welcome to come along because they can't walk or they can't walk very far, that's a win, and that's such an easy thing we can do. While we're on language, handicapped and impaired are generally considered by a lot of people in the disability community these days to be out of date and sometimes quite offensive. Again, everyone is welcome to identify however they like, and if one of your friends refers to themselves as handicapped, please do not say, Freya from Birdability said you can't do that. They can call themselves however they like. But generally speaking, broadly speaking, there is nothing wrong with having a disability. So there's nothing to be ashamed about. So it's not offensive to say someone has a disability or is disabled. But you probably want to avoid normal. In this context, normal, kind of confusing. What you probably mean is they're non-disabled or they're able-bodied or sighted or hearing or neurotypical. You definitely want to avoid wheelchair bound. I have not met anyone yet who thought that was okay if they used a wheelchair themselves. This is such a disempowering phrase. It sort of implies the person is completely confined to their wheelchair. They're nothing without it. Like that poor person, like, oh, yeah, we need to go away from that. Wheelchairs are freedom machines. People are the opposite of bound by their wheelchair. They can do so much because of their wheelchair. Instead, please use wheelchair user, just someone who uses a wheelchair. And by the way, there are lots of wheelchair users who are also ambulatory. They can walk. They just use a wheelchair sometimes, or most of the time perhaps, but they can still stand or walk a few steps if they need to. So a lot of people use this fabulous mobility device. And because we're moving away from impaired, vision impaired is being used less and less and less. Instead, you can just say someone is blind or has low vision. It's not enough to just think you're being inclusive. You have to be intentionally inclusive. Being intentionally inclusive always takes more effort and usually more time. Sometimes it costs more money, but this is the difference between putting out a Facebook invitation to all your Facebook friends and saying everyone's invited to a barbecue at my house on Saturday. I'd be like, yeah, cool, I don't know if I'll go, whatever, I've got other stuff. Versus intentionally inclusive is them sending me specifically that invitation and saying, hey, Freya, are you going to come on Saturday? I'd really love to see you there. We've got so much to catch up on. I really hope you're going to make it. Oh, you want me there? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, I'll come. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. So bird outing leaders and every birder can do a few things that can help you be more welcoming and inclusive and intentionally inclusive. Smile and say hello to other birders. I know that sounds really basic, but it makes a big difference. And the saying hello bit is important too, because not everyone will see your smile. People who are blind or have low vision, people who aren't making eye contact because they're feeling really awkward or uncomfortable or anxious in this situation, say hello as well. Outing leaders can include a welcome statement at the beginning of their outing, share their pronouns, mine is she, her, and some subtle behavioral expectations. And this is such a cool thing, can really help set the tone. And I heard the Feminist Bird Club get mentioned. I learned this from an outing I went on with the Feminist Bird Club, and it blew my mind about how much of a difference this made the whole outing feel. It can sound something, oh, by the way, pronouns. Sharing your pronouns, if you feel comfortable doing that, can be that you doing that can signal to particularly people who are non-binary or transgender that they are welcome to share their pronouns too, which matters because not everyone's pronouns match up with their visual appearance. And you might assume someone's pronouns incorrectly just because of what they look like. So some people might not feel comfortable sharing their pronouns, but if you do and you can do it, you might be opening that door. So a welcome statement can look something like, hey, everybody, my name's Freya. My pronouns are she, her. I'm really excited to go birding with you today. I just want you to know that I don't know everything there is to know about birds. Nobody does. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If I don't answer, we'll figure it out together, or ask someone around you if you can't get to me. They'll be happy to help you as much as they can. Hint, hint, everybody else. Like, we're all in this together. We're all going to be friendly and supportive. The other thing we do on our outings is we go around a circle and we invite everyone to share their names and their pronouns if they feel comfortable. And if they have an access challenge and it is helpful for everybody else to know about it, please let us know. Not everyone wants to disclose their medical history to a bunch of strangers. So doing it this way doesn't force people to do that. They can share if it's helpful to them. For example, I tell people that I have a dodgy knee. And so if there's a bench, I will be sitting down because standing is much harder for me than sitting. My knee does not like standing for very long. And it's helpful to me that everyone knows that, because as the outing leader, there might be some weird looks if I'm sitting down all the time. But if people know this, I feel a bit less judged. Someone else who maybe is deaf in their right ear, might really appreciate the opportunity to tell everyone all at once, one time, that if you want to talk to them, please stand on their left, because they will not hear you if you stand on their right. That kind of stuff. So that can be a really awesome way to help normalize access needs and invite people to share if it's helpful for them, for everyone else to know about. Don't single someone out because of a difference unless it is relevant. And if you do this, please do it one-on-one. Someone shows up on your outing with a prosthetic leg and crutches, please don't be like, oh my gosh, there's someone here with crutches. This is so exciting, because that's really awkward. But if you're on this outing and there's stairs up ahead, it's okay to say that it's maybe this is not the best example of an accessible birding location if there are stairs, but that's okay. Stairs up ahead, and maybe it's totally okay to say to this person, like up the back of the group, you know, not in front of the whole group, hey, look, I see you using crutches. That's not offensive. They know they're using crutches. They're not going to get angry with you for pointing this out. Hey, I see you using crutches. There's a couple of steps coming up. Let me know if you need help getting up them or down them, or if we need to game plan something else. Most people are really grateful that you notice that they have an additional access need and that you are being considerate and forward thinking about it. Most people are not going to be offended that you did that. Offer help, but be prepared to graciously accept no. Not everyone wants your help. Not everyone needs your help, but some people do. If they say, oh, yes, please, don't just jump in and assume you know what they need. The next question needs to be, cool, what would you like me to do? Everyone has different needs and they are the experts on their needs, not you. So let them guide you in the help that they need. If they say no, don't be like, oh, well, I was just trying to be nice. That's not cool. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just be like, yeah, no worries. Well, if you need a hand, like, let me know. I'll be around. Just be cool. Believe someone if they identify a bird. This happens to a lot of different people. Beginner birders, I've heard it happen to women birders, BIPOC birders, birders with disabilities, birders with different accents. It's remarkable how many people seem to assume that because I don't have an American accent, I don't know anything about American birds, which is incorrect. It's a really easy attitude adjustment to trust but verify, which looks like, oh, really? An American redstart? That's super cool. Let's see. And maybe it wasn't an American redstart. That's okay. Just gently explain why it's not, you know, an opportunity to learn, but just assume they got it right instead of assume they got it wrong. It's really discouraging. It doesn't make me want to go back birding with that group. And be actively anti-racist. This is big. I'm not the best educator on this. Please Google this. There is a lot of amazing online resources. There's some fabulous books. There's more on our website under the Safety in Birding page, under more resources. Anti-racism is not the same thing as not being racist. Not being racist is just neutral. Being anti-racist is active. It involves, especially for white passing people, working on our own internal biases and trying to do something forward if you see something happen out on a bird outing or anywhere else. This is really important. And if at Birdability, we were only trying to be welcoming and inclusive of straight, cisgender, white disabled birders, that's not inclusion. That's not inclusion. There's this thing called intersectionality. Every one of us holds multiple identities. Many people hold multiple historically marginalized identities, which means they're experiencing multiple systems of oppression. There are Black wheelchair users. There are gay autistic birders. Like, we have to be making sure that when we are doing this work, we are particularly being mindful of BIPOC and LGBTQIA+, as well as disabled birders, and all together, because some people are all of these things at once. We can't just try and include a piece of someone's identity. That doesn't work. We've got to do this all together. Don't force someone to opt out. Go out of your way to allow them to opt in. How does this look from a group or organization perspective? Create an inclusion and diversity statement and put this on a website where everyone can see, and use this to hold your employees and volunteers and organization accountable about the things you are going to do. Hold accessible bird outings as part of your regular programming, not just once. Keep doing it regularly, and please include that detailed accessibility information in your outing event description, which will allow a bunch of people to feel like they can opt in because you told them what it's going to be about in some level of helpful detail. Include image descriptions for social media posts. A lot of people, particularly people who are blind or have low vision or who have print disabilities, use this really cool thing called screen reader software, and it reads aloud the text on a screen like an email or a website, but it can't read a photo because photo isn't text. Image descriptions are additional components to your caption in a social media post that describe briefly what the photo is showing, or spells out exactly all the words that the infographic is presenting. Because if you don't do this, the person who uses screen reader software is being forced to opt out of that information. On a website, this is called alt text or alternative text. It's basically the same thing, slightly different, but basically the same. And this takes more effort, takes more time. Not very long though. Not very long, but you got to be thinking about it. Doesn't cost anything though, so awesome. Include closed captions for all webinars and meetings, even if no one has asked for them. Yes, people who are deaf and hard of hearing benefit often from closed captions, but again, there's a whole lot more people who can benefit from closed captions, including people who have auditory processing disorders, who are struggling with an unusual accent, like heaps of people. And if you just have it and you tell everyone closed captions will be provided in the event description, you're inviting people to opt in. A lot of people who need closed captions have been advocating and advocating and advocating, especially over the last 2 years with so much stuff on Zoom. And it gets really exhausting having to advocate for your own access needs all the time. Most people that I have run into, just if it doesn't say they have closed captions, they just assume there won't be any closed captions. They don't even bother to send you an email because they're just forced to opt out. And never ask someone for closed captions or any other access or accommodation request. Never ask someone why they need it. Do not ask someone to justify themselves. Just trust that if they're asking for it, they need it. Why would they ask for it otherwise? It's really humiliating, and it's also not your business to ask that question. Remove financial barriers to access whenever possible. Not always possible, totally, but sometimes you can have a couple of scholarships, or you can get a grant or a sponsorship to cover the program costs, or you can have a pay what you will model. A lot of people can't participate in things because of financial barriers, and disability is really expensive. And provide honorariums for speakers, consultants, writers. This is really important. It isn't fair to, if someone is working full time and paid as their job to come and do this for you, that's maybe a little different, but it isn't fair to expect someone in their free time to educate or entertain you with their experience or their knowledge or their emotional labor, and not provide some kind of monetary reimbursement for them. Especially a lot of people who have been historically marginalized. If you want to hear their voices, if you want to increase the diversity of your speakers or whoever you're working with, this can be the difference between them having the capacity to do it or not. Consultants might be people like, say you've been part of developing a really awesome accessible trail, and you invite some people in the local disability community to come out and test it out and give you feedback. That's a great thing to do if you can pay them to do it. It's not fair. They've got other stuff to do. Like that's not fair to expect them to do that for free. You need to pay them. And writers for blogs or publications, yeah, this is a thing. And some people say, oh, well, it's not in the budget. Put it in the budget. It's not an additional cost if it's just part of the programming budget. This is an issue of equity. This is what equity is. Yeah, honorariums, really important. Okay, so I'm nearly done. We're nearly there. Please share your questions, by the way. I know there's things happening in the chat that I can't see yet, but So on our website, we have a bunch of resources for birders with disabilities and other health concerns, and there's a lot more coming soon. So we talked about the Birdability map. We have a page on adaptive birding equipment, super cool. The occupational therapist in me loves this. Wheelchair mounted scopes, all kinds of nifty things. We have a Facebook group called Birdability Birders. If you have an access challenge that impacts your ability to go birding, or you're really doing this work in your community, please come join us. We have the Birdability blog, which I love using to amplify the experiences of birders with access challenges. Other birders with similar access challenges may get some cool ideas or feel some of that desperately needed representation in the birding community. And would-be allies get the opportunity to learn about someone else's experience and maybe learn a few things that they didn't know before, including how to be more welcoming and inclusive. We have virtual programs. That's a really cool option. Not everyone can go out birding, right? Bringing birds into people's homes through their computer screens is really, really cool, really awesome thing. And it's one way that a lot of people can access birds, you know, nest cams and webcams and virtual bird outings and things like that. Really, really awesome. And there's a lot more coming. I'm kind of a one-person team and we've done a lot in a year, but there's a lot more to do. So I'm looking forward to finishing off the drafts of quite a few web pages specifically for birders with different access challenges. So please keep checking back on our website at birdability.org. And really excited, May 14th, I believe, is also Global Big Day, as well as New Jersey Audubon's World Series of Birding, which is a huge big day competition thing. They've been doing it for 20 years and it's the first, we are entering a team this year. It's the first time that there will be a team made up entirely of people with access challenges. Really cool. So if you would like to support Team Nuthatch, please, we don't have the page up on their big World Series of Birding website yet. That's still in the works, but you can send a donation anytime to birdability.org/donate. We are a brand new nonprofit, so any donation is very gratefully received, especially if you found something of use in tonight's program or you feel inclined. Birdability.org/donate, because birding is for everybody and everybody. My email address is info@birdability.org. Like I said, one-person team, so if it takes me a few days to get back to you, I'm sorry. My inbox is in a constant state of chaos in a good way, I guess. And you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook and YouTube at Birdability, and you are always welcome to repost or reshare any of our posts there, because the more people who know about us and know that birders with disabilities, people with disabilities can be birding and learn more about being welcoming and inclusive birders and all that stuff, the better. So thank you very much.
Oh, wow, Freya, that was fantastic. I'm overwhelmed and impressed and excited, and thank you so much for speaking with us. This is fantastic. I'm going to give Barry and Carolyn a couple of minutes to sort through the questions in chat. So if you have any questions for Freya, go ahead and put them there now, and Barry and Carolyn will filter through those. But I have a couple questions myself, and I want to give them some time to go through them. First of all, a comment. I'm so happy to hear what you said about bird watcher versus birder. We have not been using the term bird watcher for years, and we describe all of our outings as field trips. So I think awesome. I'm so happy to hear that that's what you recommend, because we're of the same mind, it seems like. I also really, truly loved your comment about the joy that you get when you're unattended in nature. That really brought me to tears, actually. It's so fantastic to hear the wonder and joy that people feel when they're out on their own, unattended. And it's something that those among us who walk feel all the time without even appreciating it. So thank you for that. I had a serious question about low sight or blind from birth. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about this just today, because I think about blindness a lot, And I think about it's why I learned my bird songs so thoroughly, because I was afraid of blindness and I wanted to be able to bird after losing my sight. But I think about because I can visualize the birds in my mind.
Mhm.
What would you recommend for people that have never seen and would definitely enjoy being outside, and you can't help but love birds and enjoy them? But how would you recommend approaching birding
Mhm.
those who have never seen?
Mhm. Yeah. So I'll borrow from someone I know who has been totally blind since birth and has been birding since the 70s.
Wow.
He told me, and if you want to watch this interview, by the way, I did this really cool interview series in collaboration with the American Bird Conservancy. It's like an hour and a half of me talking each session with one birder about their particular access challenge and how that impacts their birding and all that kind of stuff. So all of those recordings are on our YouTube page, and you can get them from our website. But Jerry Berrier, episode 2, I asked him about this, and he said people always want to tell me the colors of birds, and that really doesn't mean anything to him because he understands intellectually the sky's blue, but like what even does that look like? He has no idea. So he said that what he really loves is size is only so interesting because that's still a bit abstract kind of, but if people can make it relevant to something, so like a robin is kind of the size of a pear, kind of like he knows how big a pear is, he's felt a pear, he's so that kind of, just saying it's robin size means nothing at all, but if you can equate it to something he's familiar with, and the thing that he really loves is when people describe the bird's behavior, because he can't see it, but it's really interesting to learn that different species of birds do all different stuff. Like a robin's on the ground and they run and then they stop, and a towhee maybe is doing that like 2 feet scratch thing, and that's a different thing on the ground. And he said he loves hearing about raptors and vultures and stuff soaring. He's like, I don't know what soaring really looks like. I have no idea what soaring looks like, but what a cool idea. And I love imagining birds soaring. And so the behavior and maybe the size, if it's relevant to something you can kind of equate it to, that's what Jerry found. And my clinical experience would suggest that would be most interesting to most people. The colors, only so relevant. If someone has lost their vision later in life and they remember what yellow is, like that's interesting too. But, and this goes for almost any kind of access challenge, you don't have to be an expert on any of this, every single kind of access challenge and what every single person might need or might not. Just ask people what they need. What's the best way I can help you? Like, what's the most useful thing for you to know? You tell me and I will try and do that thing. Let them tell you. They'll tell you. So default to that if you're unsure.
Right. Well, it sure seems like leading a sound-oriented field trip for me would be a little bit easier than leading a trip where people are unsighted, where they have low vision. So it's a real challenge to figure out how to do that. But I'm glad to hear your recommendations. So thank you.
There is a page on our website about birders who are blind or have low vision, and there's some things in there will give you, as a sighted person, some really good ideas. So check that out. Yeah,
definitely.
And I know it can be, the unknown is scary sometimes, but if you're excited to share about birds with someone else and you lead with kindness and love and a humbleness and being willing to be taught from them about what they need, like that's it. That's the ingredients you need. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need all of this other knowledge and stuff. You'll learn it. They'll tell you, like, go forward and do great things.
Yeah. Well, the future selves idea really resonated with me. So thank you so much for that. So my second question is quite short and hopefully easy for you. But why did you choose the nuthatch as your mascot? There must be a story behind that.
I have a blog post on that because I had enough people ask me speculation on social media and presentations and emails. I'm not going to give it away because I've had people tell me they really enjoyed the blog post. So
yeah. All right. So we'll look at the blog post.
You can probably start drawing parallels between nuthatches and different access challenges,
Mhm.
or different ways of birding. I'm still not giving it away though. So go go check
Thank
that
you.
out.
Well, that gives us a clue, and I look forward to reading the blog post.
Does it though? I don't know.
So,
Well, there's
Barry
a
and
link in the chat
Carolyn,
now for anybody.
Do we have some questions for Freya?
Yeah. Actually, I think I'm gonna start from the top. Sunny mentioned that he had an experience related to the topic. So Sunny, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself.
Sure. I'll even show myself while I'm doing that.
All
When I
right.
first started birding, this is maybe 25 years ago, I was taking a class at Mountain View Center, the senior center. And we had a trip over to Ed Levin. And we were there. There was a young man in a motorized wheelchair who was going along. And behind him was a young lady who apparently had visual problems. And she was holding onto the back of the chair. So he was kind of leading, she was following. He was carrying a parabolic microphone and she had headphones on. And they'd go along and he'd point at the birds, she'd hear it, she'd identify it for them. They had somebody going walking with them. And I was just, and this is like 25, 30 years ago, I can picture them going down Ed Levin, him in the wheelchair with the microphone, her behind him with the headphones on, and have a fantastic time birding. So I really felt, this is a great hobby.
Right?
That's what I saw there.
Right?
Yeah. Anyway, that's my little story.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Sunny. We got a question from Ed. How do you deal with the problems of under maintenance, which is typical when the level of maintenance for trails is so important in the reports for accessibility?
How do you, sorry, can you repeat that? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, so how do you address the typical under maintenance of trails when that's so important to how accessible a trail actually is?
In the site review or in general?
Oh, let's go with in general.
Oh, okay, in general, okay. Advocacy goes a really long way, and this is something that everyone can do, and particularly people who haven't got an access challenge. This is a really valuable thing. This is a great way to be an ally. Most park site managers, they don't know this stuff. This stuff isn't out there. The Americans with Disabilities Act standards does not cover most of this stuff. They don't know, but the point is that the point of having this location is they want people to come visit, right? And if you can explain in a positive, encouraging sort of way, if you just complain about all the stuff that's wrong with it, you probably putting people off. But if you can do it in a more positive, like, this was really great, there were so many birds, this has the potential to be such a great accessible trail, but it would be awesome if there were more benches with armrests that were connected to the trail surface. And I noticed that there's a tree trunk that comes across the trail, blah, 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 blah. That can be so valuable. Most people will be so glad that you told them because they had no idea. And if it's helpful, you can refer people to the Birdability website to learn more, or more things about why this is important. But yeah, we found that positive, advocacy with a positive kind of emphasis, it can be so useful. And yeah, many places will be really grateful that you let them know, and they'll go and try and do something about that because they want people to come visit.
Great, thank you. We got another question from Ginger. How would you best publicize a trip for neurodivergent people? She leads trips for many kids in the homeschooling community, and many of the young avid birders she's met are also on the spectrum, but she'd like your advice on how to best word that, or is that?
Yeah. I mean, you could say, so I know, so a lot of folks who are on the autism spectrum or who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, or who have dyslexia, these are all different diagnoses, and there's an umbrella term called that's neurodiversity. Their brains are kind of wired differently and they think differently. It's really cool, actually. And people who are not neurodivergent neurodivergent are neurotypical. So I'm neurotypical. That's that terminology. So a lot of folks who are neurodiverse can have a really hard time with lots of sensory information, lots and lots of noise, lots and lots of sights, lots and lots of smells, lots of people. Like, it can be really, really overwhelming. And so, particularly if you're trying to offer outings for this group of folks, sensory friendly birding, calling it something like that, and trying to build in ways to make it a sensory friendly birding experience can be the thing that makes it accessible to them. There's a draft web page about how to do that. It's not on our website yet, but working with a few autistic folks that we know, autistic birders, that's coming at some point in the next few months. And using phrases like that, sensory friendly, like, that's a big signal. Like, the people who need that know, like, that's like, oh yeah, that's me. And you can say, you know, this trip has been designed intentionally to be as accessible and inclusive as possible for people who are neurodiverse. Just say it. Like, that's not an offensive term. That's a badge of honor. You know, it's worn with pride by a lot of folks. So yeah. I'm sorry, I'd love to link to that, right?
That is a perfect answer for what I was asking for. And
Okay.
you know, as someone who's ADHD out and proud, I am very, very eager to reach those people who are like me and love birding extra special because of it. Thank you. That gave me the words to use when,
and if you're leading it, this is another really cool thing, particularly if you have an access challenge yourself. If you're leading this event, say, like, this is being led by Ginger, who has ADHD, because that tells people, oh, she's gonna know what I need. Like, that's such powerful representation, but it's also like, oh, I'm going to be safe on this event, because this is not to say that neurotypical folks or non-disabled folks can't lead accessible outings. We need all the allies we can get. Yep. But if you do have an access challenge, tell people, because, you know, that's huge for a lot of folks.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I've experienced that as a former homeschooling parent, saying, I'm leading this homeschooling trip, and I've walked in your shoes as a homeschooling parent. And so it's just that much safer for you to sign up for my class, because you know that it's something that's safe.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not gonna judge you for homeschooling.
Right. Virginia has a story about leading an outing at the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival in South Texas. She's a wheelchair user, and another wheelchair user came up and said to her, gosh, I was so relieved when I saw that you, as the outing leader, use a wheelchair, because I knew straight away you would know what I need, and you're not going to lead me off through the mud and like all this crazy stuff. Just, I felt so much more comfortable as soon as I realized. And I was like, oh gosh, but we could put it in the outing description and people wouldn't have to wait till the moment to discover this, you know, like tell people everything. Not everything, but everything you can that's helpful.
But neurodivergence is, I have my neurodivergence, I don't have yours. So it's not quite equivalent to the wheelchair thing, where I haven't walked a mile in your wheelchair. And so everyone's different, but I at least understand, okay, you just hit the moment where this is too much for you. That's cool. That's too much for you. We work with you with whatever it is, but I didn't see it coming the way maybe I could have if I was exactly the same as you. So, but
if everyone was the same, it would be boring.
Exactly.
If every bird was an indigo bunting, it would be boring.
Even indigo buntings. I don't know. It'd probably take a week. It would take a week of indigo buntings before I got bored. And then it might get like, oh, another indigo bunting. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No worries.
Any more, Carolyn?
Carolyn's got a lot of background noise at her place, so she was handing it off to me.
Okay.
And it looks like we might be clear of questions. There was a question about people who don't speak your language. If you're an English speaker and they're not an English speaker, that is in a way a disability. And how do we treat that?
or an access challenge, perhaps. For,
Mhm.
I don't identify as having a disability, but I definitely have an access challenge with my knee. It's interesting, right? Terminology and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, right, we want to be welcoming and inclusive of everybody, and that includes people who don't speak our language. If you, and maybe it's Spanish, I'm just having a stab based on where you all are. If you have a birder who could lead the outing who's a Spanish speaker, you know, like amazing. And this is another really interesting thing with Spanish speaking birders or with birders with other access challenges. Maybe someone won't feel qualified. Where's the qualification coming from exactly? But qualified to lead a bird outing. A lot of people don't think they've got enough identification skills or whatever, but maybe they'd be willing to co-lead with you, which can be a way that you can empower them in this. And after a couple times, you're like, all right, you take over. And then a couple more times, and now it's their thing and they're off, because it really isn't that hard once they've realized they can do this thing, right? So co-leading is a really cool tool, especially to help amplify historically marginalized people and get out that representation. So if you can have the outing with someone who's a native speaker or who learned that language later, who's willing to lead, or if there's someone else in the community who can act sort of as a translator. I mean, in an ideal world, you'll have a professional translator, but that costs money. Well, you know, is this something that you're willing to put money towards, that intentionally inclusive thing, right? Like, if there's a community group who serves this population in your area, maybe you could partner with them, and they'll probably have people who can act as, you know, stand-in translators. And even if you're the only person who speaks English, I mean, it's a great role reversal opportunity to have another kind of learning experience than you probably expected. But like, it's really cool. And again, your excitement about sharing birds with other people, like that's the thing that translates.
Yeah.
Your words almost become irrelevant sometimes, right? So if it is Spanish, there is a Spanish, Ken Kaufman has a field guide for North American birds in Spanish. Yep. Cool.
We
The only
bring
one
that.
I think is Ken Kaufman's one, but that's really, really cool. So like that, yeah, bring it with you, because you can find the bird you want because you know how a field guide works and point at it, and you know, like you can make stuff work, right? Yeah. Do it,
Those are all
and
great
go out of
ideas.
your comfort zone, because that's where the growth happens for all of us.
So, Freya, I want to thank you for the presentation and your question and answer session. It was fabulous and inspiring, and it really moved me in several parts specifically. So I wanted to thank you, and I can guarantee that we're going to involve our chapter in the Birdability map for our local sites. We've already started that with our field trip description, so it's just a short jump to transfer that information to the Birdability map. I look forward to doing that. And I want to thank you again for being here, and everybody else for listening to this presentation. And we will definitely be sending you something to help out with your organization. So look for that. And I just can't tell you how grateful I am that you spoke with us tonight. So thank you so much. And look forward to watching more progress with Birdability, and hearing all the wonderful new things that you're doing. And thank you so much for the vocabulary that you gave us. Specifically, the vocabulary, so important and so useful. And I'm happy to say that we're using some of it already, but I'm looking forward to, you know, using more of it as we go forward. So I'll let you go to bed. It's late in Alabama, I'm sure. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight and showing your support for Birdability and attending our Birdathon kickoff. And anyway, have a wonderful rest of your evening, a wonderful sleep, and look forward to seeing you all soon. So thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.